What's going on, everyone? Scott here. Welcome back to the channel. So we are back for another week of Bachelor in Paradise, episode 6, premiering this week, and things are about to change. This week is with the introduction of the possibility of a couple, or possibly, if we go back to Bachelor Pad days, one person splitting the money, whatever, the introduction of the possibility of winning $500,000 this week. Last week was definitely an interesting one, interesting chemistry challenges. We got a rose ceremony coming up, probably should be pretty soon after the episode starts, but we'll see where the chips fall in this episode. But before we do jump in, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button down there. We will have more Bachelor in Paradise content on the channel the rest of the summer as we move towards this, throughout this season, should I say. So just make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video. So we jump right in. Rose ceremony tonight. The 3 golden ladies will be going home. So basically, the group will be cut in half. Gary's got a decision to make between Leslie and Nancy. Has obviously gone on dates with both of them. Faith and Captain Kim have been getting to know each other, but he also wants to talk to Nancy as well, because apparently Nancy was someone that he did have on a list of people that he wanted to meet coming into Paradise. They do share a connection over, unfortunately, losing their spouses, and a very touching chat that they both have about their spouses, and that's what makes this special, hearing these stories from the Goldens. That's why I love The Bachelor, the Golden Bachelor, Golden Bachelorette, hearing these stories of people who have been through life and have had these experiences and, whatnot. I think it brings an interesting dynamic to the beach, and this is what I was looking forward to when we were doing this combining of, the regular Bachelor, Bachelorettes and the Goldens on the same beach. If we can get them to, intertwine and, some advice and, hearing these touching stories as well, then that's what I think, makes this work. But Dale and Kat also have a chat, and Dale says that he feels that Kat's been holding back some stuff in order for them to move forward. And talking about the upbringing comment that, Dale made and Kat got offended by, last episode, 2 episodes ago, whatever. They've been kind of, going back and forth a little bit, but they have had one of the stronger connections on the show so far this season. But Dale opens up about how he's been judged his whole life and, understands that all the things that, and wants to understand, should I say, all the things about Kat and, that he needs to understand more in order to move forward. So kind of leaving that door a little bit open for that connection with Alicia, but we'll see how it goes at the rose ceremony. And the guys have the roses this week, obviously, and Brian gives his rose to Parisa, Andrew to Alex, Jeremy to Bailey, Spencer to Jess. Dale does give his rose to Kat, Sean gives his to Alicia, Jonathan to Leia, Keith to Kathy, Captain Kim gives his to Faith. So that was one of the 2 big decisions here. And then the last one, Gary gives his rose to Leslie. So that means Nancy, Natasha, and April will be going home. Jesse says that Paradise is about finding love and creating relationships to take outside of Paradise and, make it work outside of Paradise. And they're looking to raise the stakes, as he says. So there will be no more new arrivals the rest of the season. So I think I was kind of mentioning last week that we're probably at about the halfway point, but I think this is probably just smack dab in the halfway point. No more new arrivals now the rest of the time. As he says, it's going to be all exercises that test your relationship. The strongest and most deserving couples will have the possibility of leaving with up to $500,000. Bachelor Pad taken to a whole new level, as Jesse kind of says. And that's what I'm kind of, excited about. I kind of mentioned it in a couple recaps before, but I used to love Bachelor Pad back. I mean, that was probably about 15 years ago that was on, but I thought the concept was really cool. I think it's that dynamic of yes, we're on this show to find love, but it's like, oh, is this, possibility of winning $500,000 here? So where does the strategy come in? And then, how do you decipher, oh, is this person, how strong is your connection? Is it just for the possibility of, trying to win $500,000, or is this truly kind of get a 2-for-1? You get a good relationship out of it and the opportunity for the $500,000. So interested to see, the kind of dynamics and kind of what transpires from here. Alicia thinks that it could crumble some relationships and can't wait to see some of the phony relationships crumble at the seams. Interested to see who she's talking about here, but we move forward to day 11 of Paradise. Kim says the real prize is finding love at the end of this, which is how it should be. But unfortunately, I don't think everyone will have the same mindset. As we see, everyone is getting to know each other, kind of asking the basic get to know you questions. Even though some of them have been dating since the beginning of the show, still just kind of basically cramming for a test, essentially, is what it seems like they're all doing. I think a couple people even kind of mentioned that, or someone might have mentioned that as well. But Spencer and Jess feel that they have the strongest relationship in Paradise, but people might want to get rid of them for that reason, because they really have, really since day one, been together, and arguably, probably, I don't think without a doubt at this point, the strongest couple to this point. Parisa and Brian still got a little bit of a rocky path from the last couple days, but Wells brings out a box for everyone. It's a bunch of poker chips, and they go see Jesse. Jesse is at a table, and he asks, "How well do you know your partner, and are you willing to bet on it?" Basically, high and low, like, what do you know? Ask them a series of questions off camera, and then Jesse will be asking each other's partner if they'll give you a number that is around what they answered for the certain question, and they have to guess, is it higher or lower, and you can wager a certain amount of poker chips. Basically, at the end of the day, the bottom three couples will not have a rose at the next rose ceremony, but the couple that wins the challenge gets a nice one-on-one date. And then also, since the women are handing out the roses this week, the women of the couple that wins this challenge, chemistry test, whatever you want to call it, does have the choice of who to give the two roses to at the rose ceremony from the bottom three couples, meaning one couple will be going home. So a lot at stake. And we jump right into it. Brian and Parisa are basically getting every question wrong. So their rocky path just keeps on getting rockier. But Jeremy risks it all. Probably the moment of, one of the two moments from this challenge, really. Jeremy risks all of his chips on the question towards or about Bailey if she spent more than $200 or $350 on a gift for a spouse. He risked it all, got it right. It was basically an all-in move. If he got it right, there was probably no one that was going to catch them, and they were a shoo-in to win the one-on-one date and win the chemistry test challenge. But if he got it wrong, almost certainly was going to be in the bottom three. But he got it right, so they were clearly in the front-runner seat to get first place in this. Gary, they were securely towards the top. They were securely going to be safe, but Gary bets half of his stack, gets the question wrong, so now him and Leslie will be in the bottom three. So Jeremy and Bailey get the date. Gary and Leslie, Kim and Faith, and Brian and Parisa are the bottom three, and Bailey will choose which two women to give the rose to and keep them along here in Paradise. Bailey is kind of trying to see who she's going to give the roses to, kind of, beginning conversation. Still some time, but Gary still can't believe he made that mistake. But, everyone will plead their case to Bailey at the end of the day. And Jeremy and Bailey's date, classic dinner date. He says that there's been a few ups and downs with them, but how he feels towards Bailey, he feels that they're in a good place, essentially. And Brian and Parisa, back at the resort, are trying to talk through their issues. And, Brian basically says that, that she over-communicates and over-compliments him. And in my opinion, that's a weird comment. I don't know, who likes to be, or doesn't want to be over-complimented in a relationship, but I don't know. Everyone has their feelings towards whatever. I don't know. But he says that there's a smothering aspect to it that will turn him off. Back at Jeremy and Bailey's date, ends with a fireworks show. Seems like they're in a good place. But as we've seen in some of the previews, we'll see if Brian wants to blow everything up with that comment that Jeremy made about, basically seeming that he's not really that into Bailey, and that if Susie was still, or he regrets not giving Susie the rose, essentially, and that whole backstory there. So we'll see if Brian wants to kind of blow up Paradise. But we head to the next day. Kim and Faith seem to have really hit it off and grown a lot in their short period of time. Gary and Leslie as well. Gary cheers Leslie up from overthinking about both of them really, but just cheering up and kind of enjoying the time that they have on the beaches of Paradise, and hope that they get a shot to stick around another day in Paradise. Jeremy and the guys are kind of talking strategy-wise about who makes sense to go home. Brian comes up and is like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Talking about you going home." And Jeremy kind of eggs Brian on a little bit about going home, bringing up kind of, their season of The Bachelor, where they had the first night, the whole Corvette or Mustang, whatever, the sports car thing about stealing the keys, and whatever. I don't know. We get that flashback, and Jeremy kind of eggs Brian on a little bit. He gets upset, and here's where I believe it's like starting to get the wheels turning of Brian turning everything upside down here in Paradise, especially with Jeremy and Bailey. And we get the little flashback of what Jeremy said about Bailey and Susie, that whole situation in the rooms there. But time for the cocktail party and the 5th rose ceremony of the season. 2 rose ceremonies this episode. Bailey is choosing between Parisa, Leslie, and Faith. Parisa and Brian have another little argument as we are, getting into the cocktail party as she feels ignored. Jonathan tells Kat that he doesn't like Leia romantically. He thinks Leia knows that they're friends. Kat doesn't think so and tells Leia, and Leia's like, nope, I didn't know that. So Leia pulls Jonathan for a chat and, wants to clear up if he wants to be more than friends. And he said, yes, 100%, but just doesn't know if he feels that romantic connection. She walks off, obviously upset, but now we're kind of getting 2 different sides, I guess you can take it. I mean, you never know how something's edited, but it seems like we're getting 2 different sides of a story here. And more Brian and Parisa drama. Kim and Faith, Gary and Leslie both pull Bailey and Jeremy for a chat, and Jeremy is kind of very black and white, and he's like, I could care less who goes home. I just want to win the money and see what happens at this rose ceremony. So glad to know the intentions are right on line. But Jeremy and Brian talk, and Brian, kind of setting up a little blackmail, as we said as we saw a little bit earlier in the episode as well, with the flashback of the information that Jeremy shared, about Bailey and about how he really felt about Susie and everything like that. But nothing to blow up before the official rose ceremony starts. As we said, the 2nd rose ceremony of the episode. So we just jump right into the rose ceremony. Bailey gives her rose to Jeremy, Alex to Andrew, Kathy to Keith, Alicia to Sean, Kat to Dale, Jess to Spencer. Leia gives hers to Jonathan and doesn't really say anything. Hits him with a "you're welcome" and just hands it to him. Everyone gets a good laugh out of that. But Bailey gives the first rose that she is handing to give out to Faith. Faith gives her rose to Kim, obviously, and then Bailey calls Leslie up and apologizes for not being able to extend a rose to her. They had to have made her do that, because why would you do that? Because they called Leslie up, then they went to commercial, so it's like, oh, that was kind of weird. Like, why would you go to commercial if we're just giving the rose to Leslie here? But clearly that's why. I don't like that they really did that, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why they made her do that, but Leslie and Gary, unfortunately, are going home, but they basically say that they'll continue their journey. I believe is what Gary said. So hopefully, maybe they continued on for their relationship outside of the show. I guess we will see more as time goes on. Parisa gives the rose to Brian. Jesse says some of you have lingering interest in someone other than your partner, and you'll get a chance to explore those coming soon. And Brian still has an issue with Jeremy. They are friends, but Bailey needs to know, essentially, is what he says. And that's kind of what we've been hearing in some of the previews. So next week looks like Brian does officially tell Bailey. So stuff could start hitting the fan here. Jeremy is upset with Brian, obviously, thinking getting involved in their relationship. But, in certain situations, I think it's fair too. And then someone is going to be voted out. And it seems like voted out by your peers. So kind of sounds like a group vote, similar to if you watch Bachelor Pad back in the day. That's kind of how they did it. There was a certain spot that it was an individual vote, and then once it got down to couples, I believe it was the couples voted, if I remember right. I don't know if it'll be anything like that, but interested to see how it goes. I'm interested in the kind of competition part now of the second half of the season. I do still hope that that a lot of these people, I know not everyone is, the relationships aren't going to work out for everyone here. That's just not how these shows and these situations work. We know that. But I still do hope that a handful of relationships can come out of this, and, that we still see that development through the second half of the season, or, the end, going towards the end of the season, now that we're in this competition, part of people's intentions may be different than just trying to find a romantic connection. But anyway, interested to see how, this continues to develop. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.